Okay, I'm going to present you this project, which is a French project, COPiLOtE, for certification of PoLe. And this project is in France in the frame of the research infrastructure called DataTerra, which has several clusters. And the cluster for ocean data is called ODATI. The mission of this cluster is to promote and facilitate access to French marine data. Could be in situ data or satellite data. And of course, to federate data management and scientific expertise on oceanographic at the national level. You have the list of the partners below at the bottom of the slide. And on the right hand side, you also have the list of the data services centers which were involved in the COPiLOtE project. So the aim of this project was to support the ODATI's data and service centers in applying to the quarter-steel certification and to carry out an assessment of the fairness of the data that managed in their data centers. I'm not going to talk about the first part of the project, about the quarter-steel certification. I'm going to focus on the fairness of the data. Just for your information, at the end of the project, 4 data and service centers have applied to the CTS certification, which is now ongoing. So I'm not going to remind you the FAIR principle, you all know them. I'm going to explain the way we have chosen to evaluate, to assess the fairness of the data in the ODATI's data centers. So we have applied the FAIR data maturity model from the RDR working group. And because we have tried and see other initiatives like FAIR is fair, FAIR implementation profile. But we choose to use the FDMM method, which this method lists 41 indicators, and there are 7 indicators for the findable data, 12 indicators for the accessibility of the data, 12 for the interoperability, and 10 for the reusability. And these indicators are also classified as essential, and it means that they are mandatory to be fair. You also have another classification which is important. So they are not fully mandatory, but they substantially increase the fairness of the data. And the last classification is useful. These ones are not mandatory at all, but they're nice to have. And if you look at the type of indicators per principle of FAIR principles, you can see, for example, that for the accessibility, you have 8 essential indicators, 3 are important and 1 is useful. So all data centers have assessed the fairness of the data with these 41 indicators. I'm not going to, because I have no time to detail all the indicators, of course, but for the findability, it focuses on identifier and on rich metadata. For this accessibility, it's on the access protocol, authentication, authorization to access the data, interoperability indicators focus on standards or fair vocabularies, on machine readability, on linked data. And for the reusability, we are focusing on the license, on the data provenance, community standard use, and so on. So there are two methods to evaluate, to assess your data with these 41 indicators. Either you measure the progress concerning each indicator, you give you like a note from 0 to 4, which is explained on this slide, and or you measure the base of fail test. you have the indicator, yes or no. And we choose to measure the progress for the data center. So the assessment was to give a note between 0 and 4 for all the 41 indicators. And this self-assessment questionnaire for each data workflow managed by the data centers were sent, and we have the COPiLOtE organized project organized meetings with each of the data centers to answer the questionnaire. You have here the list of the data centers who have been involved in the assessment process. C'est Station biologique de Roscoff, Coviolis, the Station of Villefranche, Cismer, in Ifremer, le CHOM, CERSAT for satellite data, and SCNES through the Avido altimetry products for the satellite data too. So the results, of course, I'm not going to present all of them because of the short time of the presentation, but this is an example of the F principle of all the data centers. And you can see this graph for the F principle. And what shows there that 13 over the 17 data sets, data flow that we have studied are answer to the FAIR principle with a minimum note of 3, which is rather good. But we have some of them which are failing some criteria. For example, this one is the Bentos dataset from Station biologique de Roscoff. And they were, at that time, this dataset was not labeled. Now, I think this was done 1 year ago. So now I think they will change the note. And same for, I have to conclude, okay. And for the other data set, this one, for example, doesn't have DOI pointing there towards the landing pages. So they have progress to be made. I will not spend time on this slide. I will directly go to the conclusion. And the exercise was very interesting because we have focused on the main improvement that can be made on the data set, in particular with regards to the essential criteria, which are mandatory to have FAIR data. And for the Audatis cluster, it was also very interesting to have a global vision of the FAIR character of the data that are managed in the data centers of the cluster. That's it. And if you need to discuss with us, you have emailed there, and you feel free to contact them.